And local councils are calling bailiffs over debts of just £3. We're going to read into this more from Open Democracy, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from Open Democracy with the headline of Local Councils are calling bailiffs over debts of just £3. The cost of living crisis has meant record profits from bailiff firms, with bosses taking pay rises of up to 367%. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. How goddamn infuriating is this? We already have people taking advantage of others already in the state that this country is in. People are already vulnerable. People are already struggling. People are already desperate. And what more way to really rub salt in the wounds when you hear that bailiff firms with bosses taking pay rises of 367%. How disgusting, how immoral does that make you feel? It makes me sick. It really does make me sick when I think about it. People are struggling. People are really struggling. And I know that councils are struggling too. And we know that many councils, some have not handled their budgets as well as others. But they are lacking so much investment. They need so much more investment from the government, and they're just turning a blind eye to it. I'd like to think that Labour will do something if they come into power at the next general election, but we'll have to wait and see, obviously, from that point of view. But it's really, really disheartening. And £3. I'm generally curious to hear where this £3 story is, because this is just demeaning. Like. It's just so out of order in every way, shape or form, guys. But what really grinds my gears is the fact that these bailiff firms are making record profits at the expense of people struggling. And yes, they have a very difficult job, bailiffs. They have a job to do, I understand. But there's a human side to this, and people tend to forget that as well. And I think that's really important to emphasise when we talk about people who are already struggling, as it is. And by the way, some people are in these situations at no fault of their own. Yes, there are people who are in these situations because of circumstances and their control, but there's also cases of people who are in these situations at no control of their own and find themselves in these situations. So I always tell people to try and put yourself in someone else's shoes before assuming everything. So local councils have told bailiffs to target family who are just £3 in debt, Open Democracy can reveal. In one case, a local authority in London called in bailiffs after a family accidentally received £16.36 too much from in housing benefit and failed to repay it. What? With warnings about rising debt amid the cost of living crisis and cash-strapped councils doing all they can to balance the books, bailiffs are cashing in. The surge in demand for their services has seen the income of the country's biggest enforcement agency rise by 3,800% in a single year. Between January 2020 and June 2023, councils passed on at least £4.5 billion of debt to enforcement companies, according to data obtained under the Freedom of Information Act. Its true figure is likely to be far higher, as dozens of councils refuse to provide the figures. Oh my god. Wow. 3,800% in a single year. People are getting shafted, man. Like, really? Because they received a little bit too much housing benefit? Like, this is the government cracking down on people who are living off the benefit system. This is them pushing even more enforcement on them. It's just so inhumane. Nobody thinks about the situation that innocent people are on. £16.36. It may not seem like a lot to some of us. That's a huge amount of money to some people. That's a huge amount of money to some people. It can make a massive difference. It follows reports that referrals to bailiffs to recover unpaid council debts rose by almost 20% between 2022 and 2023. They include parking fines, non-payments of business rates and housing arrears. Lambeth Council alone has issued bailiff warrants of more than 237,000 times in 3.5 years, equivalent to 3/4 of the borough's population. Wow. Some cases involve large amounts of money, but bailiffs have also been called in to recover extremely small debts. Figures obtained by openDemocracy reveal at least 128 councils referred debts of less than £100 to bailiffs, including 19 who's issued warrants for less than £10. I don't understand this. On small amounts of money, like the smallest amount of money. So it's like, I get councils are like. Here's the thing, right? I get councils are struggling. I get that. But we're chasing people with some of the smallest amount of money here. Like, am I the only one who thinks this is a tad bit too bloody harsh? I think this is extremely harsh to call bailiffs on money as small as this. When some of these situations where they don't have anything, they have literally nothing. It's wrong. I just think it's wrong from councils to be this cold, because that's how they come. This is why the way it comes across. It comes to me how they really are cold here. In some of these cases, bailiffs may not have physically attended the person's home. They may have sent threatening texts, letters, or text messages. I don't like this. You should not. They should not be threatening them. You should not be threatening them. I understand, yeah, they have money to pay back, but you should not be threatening them. That's another thing that's inhumane. Camden Council issued a bailiff warrant to recover just £3 of debt relating to a parking charge. Are you absolutely kidding me, Camden? A parking charge. £3 parking charge. So how sad are you? Spokesperson said the small amount owed means that an enforcement agent was not sent, adding, "We have since introduced measures to prevent warrants being automatically issued to low-value debts such as these." Well, I should think so. But they would not say whether bailiffs sent warning messages to the household in question. So it's likely that they were sending friendly letters saying you better pay off that £3. In another case, bailiff in Somerset were instructed over debts of just £1.20. The council claimed this was part of a larger package of debts owned by the same household. Bailiffs typically only get paid when they recover debt, either through direct payments or by seizing personal possessions. Strict laws govern how they are supposed to operate, but many face accusations of foul play. For Andy Thompson, probably not their real name, the presence of bailiffs on his doorstep came as a total surprise. Speaking to openDemocracy, he said he was leaving his flat in North London in 2022 when he came face to face with the man. He said, "We hadn't paid our council tax," he said. "You've got to pay it or we'll bring around the van and take your stuff." However, the bailiff was asking for someone who is no longer lived at Thompson's address because the council had failed to update their records. This wasn't malicious non-payment of council tax, it just got overlooked, Thompson explained. But a minute or two in our conversation, the bailiff had stepped across the threshold, so I couldn't shut the door on him. Wow. I only learned after that fact that it was an illegal tactic for a debt collector. So they even resulted in, see, some of these debt collectors now, some of them are looking to really push the premises to get. See, and there's also mistakes now by the council when they're not updating things as well. All these things is just disgusting. The confrontation escalated as the bailiff refused to let Thompson properly examine or photograph a court order he had, authorising him to attend the property. "I couldn't tell if this guy was fake or real. I felt a level of threat from that. He said, I didn't have any serious understanding of who was in my doorway threatening to take my shit." Thompson alleges the bailiff phoned colleagues who pretended to be in the van just 10 minutes away, who will start confiscating house items when they arrive. The van never materialised, and there are steps bailiffs have to take before they can legally confiscate any possessions. Anyone can pretend to be this as well. There could be people who aren't even bailiffs and could take advantage of this. That's how scary this is now. That's how scary this is. If bad people got whiff of evidence of people who are in these situations, they can turn up at their properties with a fake van, fake all stuff, and do this to people. That's just so scary. Not knowing what to do, Thompson told 909 in an effort to have the police intervene, but they refused to respond, claiming the bailiff had a right to be there despite not reviewing any evidence at the scene. See, this is also a mistake. See, there used to be a case as well that police would always turn up to these situations as well to calm the situation, but the police not helping is really, really bad. Over an hour later, one of his flatmates paid the debts just to make the bailiff leave. I was not really in a state of mind after that, Thompson said. It really affected my mental health. So they literally took the money they're not entitled to because they're not even part of it. Research by Citizens Advice last year found that a third of people who were visited by bailiffs experienced behaviour that broke official rules. This included false entry and not taking disabilities into account. Even people with disabilities. Oh my God. Just imagine someone with a disability who struggling to get around that house, and a bailiff going in and treating someone like they treated Thompson here. And then you call the police for help, and then you have that same situation with the police where they're not helping because there's not enough police officers and they don't care. It's just not right. It's just not right, guys. Almost 2/3 of people who have said they have experienced harassment or intimidation when bailiffs have visited. Sometimes they threaten to break property, almost represent their legal powers, and almost 3/4 said the experience had impacted on their mental health. Bailiffs are a law unto themselves, Chief Executive of Citizens Advice. Claire Mahori said at the time, rogue behaviour is making things far worse for people in really difficult situations, sometimes pushing them further into debt. Perhaps they should look more closely at what they can and can't do in terms of a law perspective. One person whose mental health was impacted by a bailiff visit told openDemocracy he ended up in hospital because of it. Dan Murray was visited by an enforcement agent last year who refused to answer his questions about who they were. Said, "I've got nothing," he said. No ID from him, no mention of what his debt was. He just said he was a debt collector. See, he could be making it up. A debt collector could be completely fake and imposter. It turned out to be another case of mistaken identity, but the long dispute on his doorstep had taken its toll on Dan. My heart was racing and I felt like I couldn't calm down from it. He said, later that night my chest was feeling tight and the next day I woke up with it and it was still there. The pain continued for days when he eventually called the NHS 111 service and was told to go to hospital to check his heart okay. After a series of tests and referrals to other doctors, they said the hospital concluded that the pain was a result of stress triggered by the bailiff encounter. It's by design, right, Dan said. This guy wanted to stress you out to get what he needed and then run off again. Your illusion of safety and security is shattered when you're in your own home and you're being threatened. It's a powerless feeling. I didn't feel secure in my house for weeks. My door would go and I'd get a jump for a second at a thought that it was that guy again. As debts mount up, the stress of being pursued by bailiffs can become unbearable. Charities such as Step Change offer advice and debt solutions, but more than 12.8 million British households are in debt, some struggling to find the financial and mental health support they need. Jeremy Rogers was just 20 when he took his own life shortly after bailiffs clamped on his motorcycle in 2016. The vehicle was essential for his work as a courier, but Camden Council in London asked bailiffs to pursue him over 2 unpaid parking fines. Just 2 unpaid parking fines and someone took their own life. The total fines were just about £65 each, but non-payment penalties and bailiff fees increased the total debt to more than £1,000. £1,000. Report says Rogers receives 2 visits from the bailiff contacted by Neuron plc, one of the UK's biggest debt collecting firms. At the inquest into his death, this was ruled suicide. The corridor said the presence of bailiffs must have been an intimidation for Rogers. He also expressed concern that some of Newington's plc practices, including wrongly evaluating Rogers' motorbike, but said that the bailiffs who made the visit had personally been reasonable. Records obtained by openDemocracy show that Camden Council and at least 28 other local authorities across the UK continued to use Newington plc. A Camden Council spokesperson told openDemocracy that it was satisfied that there had been improvements made by Newington and all of its enforcement agencies for use in this service, adding that it was invested in a programme of debt support. In August last year, Observer reported that the bailiff firm has seen its best ever results in 2022 after a turnover increase of 43.8% to 25.8 million. The company declined to answer questions from openDemocracy. During the pandemic, measures were introduced to limit bailiff deployments in a bid to reduce COVID transmissions, but the financial crisis faced by many councils led them to being swiftly reinstated, despite warnings it could lead to a surge in bailiff actions. For many bailiff bosses, this has resulted in bumper paydays. They include bosses at CDER Group Limited, whose higher paid director took home nearly $2.4 million in 2022, a 367% increase from the previous year. The company is used by dozens of councils as well as Transport for London to collect debts related to the ultra-low emission zone ULEZ. Spokesperson for the CDER group told openDemocracy that the pause in bailiff actions during the pandemic distorts any revenue comparisons and said it would not comment on its director's 367% pay rise. This is disgusting. Disgusting that they get so much money for destroying people, literally destroying people. What they do. Bush, Stewart and Sota, a bailiff firm widely used by councils across the UK, has seen its turnover increase by 150% over the last 3 years, rising to almost £30 million. The company is owned via a tax haven and has paid out almost £3.6 million in shareholder dividends during that period. They did not respond to a request for comment. Of course they didn't. As the cost of living crisis has words, Citizens' Voice and Step Change have both called for fully independent regulator on a statutory footing to raise standards among bailiff companies. This is even more important as the cost of living crisis pushed households across the country into hardships and likely into arrears, said Peter Toolan, Head of Policy Research and Public Affairs at Step Change. Enforcement action or use of bailiffs should be used as a last resort by local authorities after engaging with and supporting residents that see whether they're experiencing financial difficulty. In any cases that bailiffs are used, there must be a focus on protecting vulnerable individuals and not overstepping the mark. I knew it was bad, but some of the I didn't think some of the things I wasn't expecting to read a suicide story. I knew things were bad for people, but it's really tough, guys. It's really tough, and while I have suffered my own mental health issues, when I talk about stories like these, guys, it can really punch a real really in the heart when I think about them, and it really does infuriate me when I see these bailiffs companies making so much money, making record profits at the expense of people who can't even feed themselves, who are relying on their one and only job just to get by, and they're having everything taken away from them just in even some of the most smallest of pennies. And like I said, I understand council situation. I really do. I really understand the council situation, but they are not but if this report is to be true from openDemocracy, they are showing a severe lack of compassion. For the fault about the situation that so people are in. Severe lack of communication is missing here between those who are in debt and the council themselves. There's a severe lack of communication here, and literally just going to the bailiffs. I know there's a due process of all this. I know there's a due process for all this. I understand. And I understand councils have a duty to get back debts. I understand that. But there is to be a humane way of doing this. And the way this is being done is inhumane, guys. That's the issue. The legal and the moral point of this is that this is not being done right. And there should be, the way things should be done is a payment issue or whatnot, and having general discussions about how they can resolve these issues instead of just having to just go to the bailiffs. And on these small amounts of money is just nonsense, absolute nonsense from the council. It really is harsh, guys. So what do you guys make of this story? What do you make of local councils calling bailiffs? What do you make of the fact they're making record profits? People are struggling as it is. Let me know your thoughts about the story and more in the comment section down below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button, share this across social media, and subscribe because it really does help support the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very soon.